Hi, friends. It's time for another episode of Create This Book. I am scrambling to finish this book because I kind of have some fun ideas for books 2 and 3, but I still have a ways to go before I'm done. So let's get cracking. The first page I'm going to do says, create quick sketches. Draw something in 1 minute or less. Repeat, drawing different things each time. I'm going to use a separate sheet of paper for this prompt because a little bit of the pen from the previous page is ghosting through. For the sketches, I wanted something kind of simple to draw, so I'm going to use these tiny squishies that I got recently. I have no idea what I'm going to do with them yet, but I've never let that stop me before, so why let it get in the way now? Either way, they're all the same basic shape with pretty simplistic features, so I'm hoping they'll be easy to draw quickly. 1 minute goes really fast. So even though I started out pretty relaxed, just sketching out general shapes, expecting to be able to refine them, that's not happening. These are looking a little crazy. Eventually, I got a little faster at the same shape over and over, and I was even able to add faces to some of them. Now that all of the sketches are done, I'm going to try to make this page a little more fun to look at. I'm going to start by going over the sketches with a black liner. I'm not going to alter the sketches or fix where the lines should be, even though some of them could really use it. But I am going to give some of them eyeballs, because most of them didn't get any. Lining this makes it a lot more obvious that some of them have some weird foot-leg areas happening. But some of it is the squishy's fault. I swear that's how the monkey feet are printed. To color these in, I'm going to use pastel colored pencils in the same colors as the squishies, but I am going to add a little shading to each one. It's honestly so satisfying to see them sort of come alive as they get colored in. I mean, not alive, they aren't speaking to me or anything, but they're so much more aesthetically pleasing once they're all colored in. Obviously, so far we've had a penguin, a monkey, a pig, and then this animal. When I first pulled the squishy out, I was sure it was a bear. But then, once I started sketching him, well, I'm not actually sure anymore. Bears don't usually have a different color lower half of their face, and he has kind of weird shaped hands. I don't know if it's just the way I drew him or if I've been analyzing him too long, but he actually looks more like a badger or something. Next is obviously a chick. Or a baby duck. No, it's a chick. It's definitely a chick. This last one is a lamb. A bright green lamb with an incredibly shocked look on his face, but it's definitely 100,000% a lamb. After they were all done, I wanted to add a background, but as usual, I struggled. 90% of the time, I just color the background with chalk pastels and call it done, but I wanted to do something a little more interesting. I settled on rainbow stripes. It's not the most groundbreaking idea, but they're cute and easy, and I like them. Plus, they aren't taking attention away from my cute little eggy characters. I sealed the drawings in with matte Mod Podge, let it dry overnight, cut the page down the middle, and then glued it in. And it's done. This was a pretty simple page, but I really like how it came out. Before I move on to the next page, I wanted to remind you that the Create This Book 3 collab started by Aussie Crafter, and including yours truly, is still growing and making the rounds. As of the editing of this video, the 6th artist has just posted her video, and there's some really exciting ones coming up. I'll link that playlist in the description below. And as always, if you want to see more of my Create This Book journey, there's a full playlist. Back to the pages at hand. The next page I'm going to do says, create art with wax. Decorate this page using only wax. This prompt I'm actually going to do in the book. Neither of the pages on either side of the prompt are done yet, and I don't expect wax to bleed through. For this one, I'm going to bring back a character that I've been missing since I made him. Bebop. I love him so much. He's still one of my favorite characters. He's so cute. But this time, I'm gonna give him a whole body, which means that I have to decide what his hands and feet look like. And that's what I came up with. Very creative. But I'm also gonna give him a companion. A significant other, if you will. Because a handsome fellow like this isn't gonna be single for long. But I really struggled with what she was gonna look like. First, she sort of looked like two bowling balls stacked on top of each other, and she had a few different awful options for feet. Eventually, I got rid of all of that, started over, and came up with something a little more sweet and cute. Now, this prompt says wax, and I'm gonna go with the obvious answer. Crayons. But I'm actually gonna use these super cheap crayons that don't even have a brand on them. They just say crayon. I tested out the king of crayons, Crayola, first, but Crayola crayons actually sort of build up in areas where these cheap crayons are very consistent in their color. There's no gradient or layering ability with them, but since I don't usually work with crayons that much, I'll take predictability overall. Very scientific and thorough testing, I know. Since these don't blend at all, I'm kind of stuck with the colors that I have, which is not many, but I have a basic sort of plan. But first, I need to sharpen these crayons to the smallest point that I can so I can make my lines nice and crisp. Now, Bebop is sort of a bluey green color that doesn't match any of these, with pink accents that really don't match anything I have. So my plan is to try to trick the eyes a little bit by using colors on either side of what I need, letting my mind blend them together. For his face, ears, and hands, I went with a red that's much darker than his pink face. But then I colored it in with a pink that's too light. It's not a perfect illusion, but it works. His body was a little harder. I started with a dark green for the outlines and fur details. I started to color him in with a light green color, but then the lines started to get a little lost, and it was obviously too green for Bebop. So I went over the outlines with a blue color. Well, not so much over the outlines. It's more like I'm making really thin blue lines on either side of the green lines. But it really worked to bring some of that blue back into the green and give him the general aura of a sea green color. You might notice me lint rolling every once in a while. I didn't want to brush the crayon debris away and accidentally mark up the paper. So now that Bebop is done, it's time for his girlfriend. Since she's a new creation, I don't have to try to match any previous colors for her. So instead, I'm just trying to pick colors that will show up nicely as an outline and that will all look good together as a whole. I'm not particularly thrilled with how her face ends up, because she kind of looks like a Muppet. But let me be clear, I still love her. I get a lot of comments telling me that I'm much too hard on myself, and that's probably true, but I also don't take myself or my art super seriously. I make fun of my creations no matter how they come out because it makes me laugh. And that's just my personality in general. And I want you guys to see that it's okay to have fun with art even if it doesn't come out how you want. I'm still having the best time making things and sharing them with you, even when they come out with a giant head and no neck. For the backgrounds on these lovebirds, I use paint pens to make these little heart exclamation point shapes behind them in each other's colors. That way, you know that they're in love. And I fixed Little Lady's eyes so they weren't so soulless looking. She needs a name. All I can come up with is Shebop, so if you have a better idea, let me know. I'm not sure if the wax will transfer or stick to the other page later, and the paint pen kind of chewed up the paper a little bit, so I did a coat of matte Mod Podge over everything to seal it all in. And now this page is done. I am absolutely in love with this page. At first, I wasn't sure because the crayons are so light, but I really like how the paint pens kind of highlighted the characters. And the pastels all together are really, really pretty. The last page I'm going to do says, create a person. Come up with a character. Draw what they look like. Describe their personality, and list their likes and dislikes. I'm going to use a separate sheet of paper for this again because I know I'm going to use markers and they will definitely bleed through the page. I chose this page because I immediately had an idea for it. This character is going to be a hippo, but a very girly girl hippo. And unlike those quick sketches, I'm using my usual sketching process. I start with really basic shapes for each part, and then I slowly refine it. I move lines in or out, round the curves a bit more, and add in little details and various extra features. It starts to get really messy. I evened up a few of the parts that I wanted to be symmetrical, like her ears and eyes, using a circle maker. Then I started to darken the lines I wanted to keep and erase the rest of the chaos. It was as I was doing this that I realized I didn't actually like how it was looking. She looks just a little too stiff, if that makes any sense, so I wanted to just slightly tilt her head. I did that with Bebop's girlfriend, and I really liked how that was looking. But I really didn't want to erase all of that work on her head and start over. So instead, I went over all of the lines with a dark fine liner, and then used that to trace the whole thing onto a clean sheet of paper, tilting her head just a little. Was it really worth all of that work? I mean, I think so. Then I very carefully went over the lines with a fine liner. One that I very specifically picked out because it doesn't smudge with alcohol markers or Mod Podge. Someone a while back suggested that I should swatch all of my fine liners and test them, so I did. Best idea ever. After all of the lining was done, I erased all of the pencil lines and added a few more details. Next, I'm going to go in with alcohol markers. And since this is just plain printer paper, the markers will bleed a bit. So I'm trying to stay just a hair's width away from the outlines so that it doesn't bleed past them too much. I can always go in and thicken the lines up later if I need to. This hippo is purple because, in my mind, hippos are always purple. Kind of like how all my stegosauruses are purple. Most of this marker is just a base color for the colored pencils that I'm going to use in a bit to go over everything. Except for her bow and her skirt, because they are going to be super sparkly. And the way I'm going to try to show the sparkles is going to require a million tiny dots. And I just don't want to do that all with pencils. Markers are going to be so much faster. I use 6 different markers in the same color tone, but different shades. This might be overkill and unnecessary, but unnecessary is my middle name. I started with the lightest color, laying down a base over most of the skirt, leaving a couple of areas of extreme highlight. Then I moved on to the next darkest color, going over most of it, but leaving just a little bit of the lighter colors showing in the middle. Sometimes I made lines around the outer edge, but I mostly used dots. Then I just kept going, getting darker and making more dots and less lines, while sticking more and more to the outside edges. Does that make sense? Does it look sparkly? After finishing off a few more spots with markers, I moved on to the colored pencils. While I add a little depth and shading, let me tell you about this girl. This is Sheila. And as I said, Sheila is a very girly girl. She loves makeup and hair and clothes, and of course she loves sparkles. She loves painting her nails and getting all dressed up. She's me the 10% of the time that I'm not too lazy to get all done up. Sheila loves to make the world bright and sparkly, just like her personality. She hates things that aren't pretty and things that are boring or messy. I did add a few more dots to her glitter skirt with the colored pencils. Just couldn't help it. It's so hard to stop. Then I went in with a white paint pen to add a few more super white sparkles and to add some highlights to her lips and nails. There is nothing matte about this girl. Even though there wasn't really any marker bleeding outside the lines, I did go back in to thicken up the outside border and some of the other lines that I really wanted to emphasize. Ooh, I love her so much. My eyes are so happy. I made a nice little poster on the other half of the paper for her bio and added a very appropriate quote by the lady herself. Now for the background. Sheila is going to be standing in her bedroom, surrounded by her favorite things. So she has a vanity with all of her beauty products and a few costume changes ready to go. I added in very light carpet and walls, then I sealed everything with Mod Podge and glued it in. I love her so much. The background is a little boring, but I spent so much time on her. And really, she's the star of the show anyway. That's all the pages for this week. What do you think? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.